This is called Standing Straight. There's this club and resort just a little northwest of here where I had my first gay experience. Well, that may be putting too fine a point on it. A better way to say it, perhaps, is that the Parliament House is the place where my behavior may have led others to believe I was gay for the very first time. My girlfriend Jacqueline's friends, a longtime couple named Stephen and Dustin, were weekend fixtures at the Parliament House. Since Jacqueline and I had begun dating, they'd extended invitations to me at variable intervals. But I'd always decline due to work, whether I was working or not. Jacqueline accompanied them a few times a month for drinks and dancing to insanely grating pop music, and she would regale me with stories that left me fascinated, confused, and sometimes slightly repulsed. Most of those stories are not mine to tell, but suffice it to say I was fascinated the way David Attenborough would be at tales of a hitherto unknown Amazonian tribe, isolated since the Bronze Age. The stories that caught my attention most were those involving bewilderingly casual oral sex. Two men come together, one thinking, I sure could go for a blowjob, the other thinking, I sure would like to blow someone. Their eyes lock, they adjourn to a presumably isolated corner, a dick is produced, sucked to completion, and they go their separate ways. Incredible. In my world, a blowjob is typically the end result of many long hours, even days, of extreme dedication, hard work, expensive bribery, and possibly pathetic, whiny begging while being pushed out a door into the lonely night. After enough invitations and with my weekend suddenly free due to a job change, I relented and agreed to accompany them to a 10 o'clock drag show. Jacqueline drove while she blasted Lady Gaga's awful, pounding Born This Way to amp herself up for the extremely gay evening ahead, and I stared silently out the passenger window at the streets and businesses flying past in the darkness. We parked at the far end of a darkened dirt lot and made our way toward the thumping sounds of electric bass in the distance. I wanted to not be nervous, no big deal, whatever, just a gay bar, but I was nervous, and that made me feel guilty. It was not a homophobic anxiety, or at least I don't think so. Perhaps I'm not qualified to make that determination. That's what made me nervous. I'm a white, American, heterosexual man, and you simply cannot be less of a so-called minority in this country than that. Maybe it speaks to my naivety or sheltered existence heretofore, but I'd never before bothered to examine my status in this life. I was so busy chastising myself for being a closet homophobe that I barely noticed I'd followed Jacqueline into the lobby of the theater, and a large man dressed in drag was glaring at me and demanding in a deep baritone voice with just a hint of lisp on the end, ID please, sweetie. I nodded in silent fear and produced my ID. Jacqueline took my hand in hers and led me into the Footlight Theater, up a staircase into a foretop at the back. Stephen and Dustin were already there, and they were joined by mutual friends, another couple named Mark and Josh. I sat with Jacqueline behind the table, our backs pressed firmly against the divider between our table and the rear of the theater, safe, no chance of a hit going down. The five of them exchanged pleasantries while my head darted pigeon-like around the theater, noting routes of escape, just in case things got hairy, if you'll pardon the pun. Do you guys want a drink? Dustin asked us. Yes, I shouted before the question was even finished, and we followed Dustin to a bar at the far end of the main building where he got the attention of the bartender, an enormous man in a pink wife beater. They spoke briefly, Dustin ordered, and then the bartender turned to me, perhaps smelling that Irish Spring cheap hand soap straight man stench in the air. What do you have? He asked, cocking an eyebrow. I ordered a Johnny Walker Red on the rocks. What he gave me was 11.5 solid ounces of scotch and a single ice cube in a 12-ounce clear plastic cup. I decided on the spot I was going to do all my drinking at the Parliament House from then on. We returned to our seats and I started finally to feel at ease. Then, a 19-year-old server, thin and Hispanic, started having a conversation with Dustin across our table. The conversation mostly consisted of this young server complaining about a man he fucked the night previous not washing his asshole thoroughly enough, asking Dustin what type of enema bag he preferred, and using the word faggot so many times I started to doubt its existence. The way you would if someone made you write telephone 1,000 times. By the end, it would just look like an absurd random combination of letters. Telephone, what does that even mean? The server was about to continue when he turned and caught the mouth agape expression on my face. "Oh God, are you straight?" he asked. "Yes," I said, "but go on. There's no way for it to get more awkward from here." At that moment, the lights in the theater dimmed and a booming voice came over the PA to introduce the MC. And then, from behind a curtain, emerged an enormous black man dressed in a flowing sequin evening gown and wearing heels so tall I was sure his massive frame was going to topple and take out the first 2 rows of seats. He wore heavy makeup I could see clearly even from the 50 or so feet that separated us, and his hair was curled into a massive bun on top of his head with tendrils of curls cascading down his neck. Darcel Stevens, a former UF football player, is an incredible performer no matter the rubric upon which she is graded. Her act had the structure of a well-timed comedian working from pre-programmed bits of business, long memorized and thoroughly rehearsed, though I sensed it was all completely improvised. About halfway through working the crowd, Darcel stumbled upon a sort of stereotypical gay couple. The tender, nubile youth and the elderly, wealthy old queen. Darcel interrogated the youth about his personal history, age, race, job, and then finally a preferred sexual position. When the youth responded that he was versatile, Darcel smirked at the audience and said into the microphone, "Right, baby." Then to the audience, "The boy says he's versatile, y'all," translation. And the crowd, a crowd of gay men with a sparse lesbian attendance, responded loudly and in unison, "Bottom." I've never felt that I knew less about how the world worked than at that moment. Darcel wrapped up her opening and the acts began. Men, all men, born men, with their male parts, but looking suspiciously like women, dancing provocatively to terrible pop music, confusing some of the straight penises in the room, but not mine. I announced quickly that I was going for another round of drinks and that I was up and moving. I stepped out into the main building, lit a cigarette, and steeled myself against the remainder of the evening before following the path we'd taken earlier towards the bar at the far end. I casually stepped around men dancing and groping each other, all the time resisting the urge to say loudly, "Evening, sir, I'm straight," to each and every one of them. After clearing the first 2 dance rooms and finding myself in some breathing room, I looked casually to my left and noticed to my horror an incredibly fit, short black man wearing a silver banana hammock, dancing on a platform which brought his crotch even with my eye level. I wanted desperately to look away, but it was spellbinding. He danced like dancing could stop the bomb from falling, and yet, I was the only person paying even cursory attention to him. The dance floor surrounding him was totally empty. He was dancing his heart out on that platform in that silver Speedo for no one. There was a line waiting to get the bartender's attention, so I made myself comfortable, or at least I tried. I was suddenly faced with a problem that I didn't know existed. I realized, as I stood there, letting some of my weight rest lazily against the bar, that I couldn't remember how the fuck straight people stood. I'm a straight person, so my problem was essentially that I'd forgotten how to stand like I do. I froze, suddenly feeling every eye in the place resting on me, and I half expected all of them to slowly raise an accusing finger and shout, one of us," at me, like the pinheads and bearded women in Todd Browning's Freaks. I tried every leaning position anyone has ever tried when standing at a bar. I leaned on my right side, left hand on my hip, cigarette dangling from my mouth, but my brain screamed, "This is the gayest anyone has ever looked. Try again." I flopped around at the edge of the bar like a dying fish struggling back into the ocean. Left side, right side, centered, back on. I couldn't figure out what to do with my hands either. I realized they were not resting on the bar as I hoped, but they were hovering 6 inches above it, and they were shaking violently. It occurred to me that in my haste to try to look straight, I must have looked like the gayest, most nervous patron to ever cross the threshold. I panicked and considered for a moment running out of the bar, heading to the street, flagging a cab, and explaining things to Jacqueline later. That moment, the bartender wandered over to me casually and smiled. What the fuck was he smiling about? Didn't he know we were in the middle of a crisis? I did not smile back for fear that it wouldn't be what I decided in my own head in the moment was a straight smile. "Hey," he said, "where's your girlfriend?" He shouted it over the music. He shouted it so loudly that everyone in the room heard it clearly. "Yes, I have a girlfriend," I remembered, and ironically, I felt like kissing him. I I made my way back to the theater with the drinks, and when the last routine ended and the lights came up, our party moved outside for a cursory tour of the facilities. Here again, I felt uncomfortable, especially when they walked me past a large outdoor pool. I was relieved when my nostrils stung with the sweet smell of chlorine. What must have gone on in that pool since that place opened? They could tell I was slightly shell-shocked, so they spared me a giggling post-mortem on the evening, and Jacqueline and I said goodnight as they wandered back inside to get into all of those things you'd expect them to get into. And on the way back to the car, we passed a dwarf, no more than 3'5", dressed in a biker's outfit, carrying a riding crop. I can't be sure now, but at the time I thought he mumbled, "One of us," under his breath as I passed. But he had it backwards. In the mind-blowing world of the Parliament House, the panicky, vibrating straight man is the freak. Thank you.